Here we are on top of the stars. Never thought we'd ever get this far. We live for moments like this. Moments like this. Moments like this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Giannetti, Editor-in-Chief of Homepage News, and welcome to a special roundtable edition of the IHA Connect Virtual Industry Education Series. Today, we're going to take a look into and beyond the results of the recently released Homepage News report on the 2023 IHA Occasion Survey. The report offers an in-depth analysis of how consumers are currently celebrating life moments and what that means for home and housewares purchasing in 2023. I'm pleased to be joined today by the IHA Market Watch team. We have Leana Salamah, IHA's Vice President of Marketing, Tom Mirabile, Principal of Springboard Futures and Consumer Trend Forecaster for the IHA, and Joe Derochowski, Home Industry Advisor for the NPD Group. This is going to be an interesting roundtable discussion. I encourage everyone to look and read the occasions report that ran on Homepage News. A link, it will be put into the chat room for you all to copy. Take a look at that. We're not going to go through all of the detailed content in that report today. And believe me, there's a lot of great content that takes a look at life moments or occasions, 8 of them, in fact. And it breaks it down by how people plan to, the frequency with which people are renewing these occasion celebrations, and how home and housewares purchase opportunities tie into that. The magnitude of the occasions opportunity is really important as this industry sort of moves into what it is going to be perhaps that more permanent next phase. That's just looking for an opportunity to connect with its consumer, not just once in their lifetime, but throughout their lifetime. Leana, let's start with you. I think you have some interesting perspective on how to view each of these occasions as a whole when you look at them across the lifespan of consumers and purchasing opportunities. And why did the IHA believe this particular topic is something that is worth a deeper dive?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so looking at when we talk about occasions and these life moments, these are things that happen really just kind of incidentally in your life. They don't happen on a continuous annualized basis, right? Things like birthdays and anniversaries, those are always going to happen, always going to come up. We're talking about those fundamental, life moments that once they take place, you've really, the scope of your life has changed to some degree. So while the occasions themselves, things like weddings, childbirth, even new pet ownership, new home ownership, while those things certainly are an inflection point of where you tend to accumulate more home and housewares goods, they're also a pivot point in the consumer's life cycle where they actually get on the other side of that occasion, and they're a different kind of consumer then. There's a difference between somebody and how they buy things who doesn't have children and they change once they have children, before they own their home, after they own their home, or even before they change dwellings. So it felt really important in understanding consumer lifestyles, which is what IHA has really moved into these last few years, is understanding the occasions that occur that change those lifestyles fundamentally.
We always are looking for opportunities for positioning this industry new. And newness is going to be, once again, very, very important in 2023. Joe, you have a quote in the occasions report that says the following: it's not just the occasions that drive you in giving a gift, but you're also living that occasion. How does this all come together from a merchandising and marketing standpoint, and why does it really, and how does it really connect to the consumer opportunity?
Well, one of the things you think about is it really is an emotional moment. And when you think about whether you're a retailer or manufacturer, you're always trying to elevate your brand within the consumer's mindset. And with these emotional moments, it just allows you to really connect to them with it. But what's also beautiful about it, it's not just the moment itself, but usually, let's say you're the gift giver, you too are also ripe at that moment for the manufacturer and retailer to rebuild a connection or to reconnect with you, to also kind of leverage that moment. So it really can be, if managed right, a 1 + 1 = 3 opportunity. But the bigger issue is this gives you a chance to really kind of win a place in the consumer's heart and mind. And anytime you get a chance to do that, you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Tom, you have mentioned often, and I think I wrote this in a column recently, that we really have an opportunity to celebrate everything. We're talking about occasions, and we are actually talking about very specific life moments, but the continuum of those. And I think your point is celebrating occasions sets up kind of how we celebrate everything and how this business can sort of capitalize on that, tap into that going forward. Give us your thoughts in general on this whole occasions opportunity.
Well, I think, as consumers, first, there's the whole issue of self-gifting. Okay. And I think that, something that we don't particularly address, but it's a big opportunity, because especially now as we are in a period of flux, whether you want to talk politically, economically, in terms of pandemically, and nothing seems certain. And those are moments when consumers tend to be out and about and say, you know what, I just need a quick pick me up for me. Today I'm gifting me. You'll hear it at registers, you'll hear people talking about it. I deserve this, those moments. So I don't want to push self-gifting to the side. But as Leana pointed out at the beginning, once these occasions occur that we talk about in the report, these people are suddenly living a new life. They're looking at themselves differently, and they're buying for themselves, and the things that they ask for from others are different. So it's a very, gifting is we try to put to silo it to one degree or another, but at the same time, a lot of what the report reveals is it's a movement forward, seeing housewares as a gifting industry. And that affects everything from the way we package to the way we present, the way we merchandise, the things we merchandise together. So gifting is broader than any of us can imagine. And the opportunity in housewares is incredible.
It's funny, when I started in this industry, what seems like 1,000 years ago, but really just 30 years ago, the idea of bridal registry was the predominant gift opportunity in this business. And we saw that evolve accordingly. Then it became gift registry, which was somewhat unspecific. It's almost like we're at a point where we need to think of life moment registration. We need to think of the opportunity to begin a relationship with a consumer, sometimes before they're actually starting the home, but right at that point of inflection where they are starting the home, and recognizing that we're going to have an opportunity to stay engaged, excuse the pun, but engaged with them at that first major life moment through all these others. We take a look at engagement and wedding registry, and we look at a bridal or wedding. We have those as 3 separate categories in this report, but really it all wraps under the idea of wedding and all that is around it. Tom, I want to start with you on something, because I mentioned that it often starts before the wedding or whatever. You have mentioned in the past that we need to be aware that in today's world, many of those people getting married have actually maybe lived together for a while, and that cohabitation is something that has to be considered going forward. Talk a little bit about that, and when does the relationship really begin?
Well, I think, we can't deny the fact that there are 2 things that are really affecting registries right now. One is male involvement in registries, which means that we're starting to see more interest in things that are interesting to men. It's not just a female-only thing. Couples do it together, which means you're seeing more opportunities for grilling, more opportunities for barbecue, outdoor activities. It's not just electronics, which has been the focus for a lot of people. But that aside, we can't deny the fact that cohabitation it's the norm. Okay, it's the norm as much as marriage is the norm. So depending solely on registries, we're going to lose that way. And I think that one of the things that, in terms of even merchandising, talking to occasions that couples spend together, end caps that say, gifts for your BFF couple, so we start talking in the industry. We can't just let it go with the fact that those couplings have become invisible to us. They're visible to the consumers we're selling to. So how do we leverage our relationship with customers that already love us and say, we know you've got besties. What are you doing this weekend? Who are you inviting over? What are you going to do with them?
If I could, Peter,
Go ahead.
I think one of the, we've talked about this a little bit, but some of the occasions of the 8 that we look at, there are some that are, registry oriented occasions, right? When you get married, when you have a, baby shower. But a lot of the occasions that we look at are things that don't have a registry necessarily associated with them, right? Like new pet ownership or even retirement. It's not like there's a huge, groundswell of retirement registries out there. And there's also, in these occasions, there are ones that kind of command a gathering, right? Kind of a formal gathering where people get together and there's a gift exchange there. And then there's these ones that are much more informal in nature, where it's, you may not have a party for your new pet, right? But if I know you got a new pet, the next time I come over to your house, maybe I'm going to pick something up for you. So I think as we talk about kind of the gifting portion of it, this, to Tom's point, self-gifting is very important. But a lot of this is, what are you going to pick up for your friend and bring over to them, to help them just, make their new pet feel at home, or, celebrate their new home, or even just to acknowledge that they've recently retired. There may or may not be a formal event associated with these things, but that doesn't mean the opportunity is not there.
Right. I think we do get locked into this need for sort of formal boundaries of how to promote around certain gift periods, but this is a fluid situation. Again, you connect the occasions and you have a greater whole than each of them together. Joe, any thoughts on kind of how this kind of taps into the promotional strategy going forward for these retailers?
Well, I think what it's doing is it reminds us and opening a door of innovation in how we promote to folks, because a lot of times it's a community that's going to it, whether it's a group of people showing up at an engagement party, whether it's same thing with back to college and you got parents talking with each other as they get ready for it. It really is trying to figure out, how do I tap into that new community that's been played out there? And not only how do I tap into it, but when do I do it? We see a lot of times that the number one engagement month, I think, is in December, historically around Christmas time. Well, a lot of times, a lot of these other events are during the summer or warm months. Maybe this is a chance for Q1 or Q2. So how do you time out the relationship and the promotion for the consumer so that we got a chance to build that relationship January through December? Like, what are the different ways that we can leverage each one of these, along with the other life moments that happen for the consumer throughout the year? But how do we best A, time it, B, how do we make it so that we tap in not only to the gift giver and the gift receiver, but also the broader community at large around them?
I love that, Joe, because I think, you're absolutely right. A lot of people tend to do a lot of these things at the same time. You see a lot of girlfriends who all get married around the same time, or they all have their first baby around the same time. Certainly, I think that's really interesting. If you can capture one person, kind of the circle around them of people who are also in that same mindset or in that same stage of life, I think is a huge opportunity.
I think also we have to look at how we can stay of the moment without having to make big assortment changes. I mean, like this year, very much happening right now is Galentine's Day. Okay, so it's where you give, I love it because it's an opportunity for us at retail. You give your best gal friend, if you're a woman, you give your best gal friend a Valentine, and it's like, so, I mean, how do we respond to that? Do we have the alacrity to make something like that happen on the fly? It helps move an extant assortment, but it's also something that says, I'm with it. I'm in this with you. We think this is a great idea and we're going after it,
we've been kind of forced to talk about things in a slightly narrower window the last couple of years, where we went through the boom, unexpected but big boom during the heart of COVID, and then we saw the natural kind of fall off as that demand sort of peaked, and we were hit with other headwinds. This industry is right now at a point where it needs to find a broader message than just purely, here's the product, here's the price point, here are the features. It needs to now connect, as Joe said earlier, kind of tug at the heartstrings a little bit. I want to give you some perspective on numbers, though, that show why we want to do this report on an annual basis, because things are going to shift. For instance, when we did the occasions report this year, 29% of those surveyed in last year's report were expecting to be involved in family or friend engagement, whereas 21% when we polled them late last year. So it's a decline. You saw all that you saw similar declines around other wedding related moments. So you can look at that in a vacuum and say, well, weddings are down this year. Obviously they're going to be up considerably, perhaps over a few years ago, but no, this is a point where you now have to look at the next stage of that person's life. You're not leaving that person now that the wedding is down. I would like to kind of dig into kind of some of the generational nuances right now that we see. The survey really points out how important the 18 to 34-year-old group is right now in general, as it relates to those who are kind of on the front end of this continuum of occasions and life moment celebrations. But we can't forget that there are other generations that are still getting involved in this. Leana, I think we noted earlier in one of our webinars that there are people who are getting married later in life. There are people who are getting married perhaps for a second time. So we don't want to exclude generations as we go here. Any thoughts on that?
Certainly. Actually, before I answer that, I just want to back up briefly to what you said about some of the declines in the numbers. I do think it's important to note that things like weddings and the like, while it looks like year over year, yes, they are down from maybe 22, what happened in 22 to expectations for 23. But it is still well above where we were in 2019 pre-COVID. So you had a period of time where you had this huge backlog of people who wanted to get married. So coming out of the gate, we were going to spike huge. And it's going to take, I think the Wedding Report, which is another research company out there, they're anticipating that we won't get back to 2019 levels until probably around 2025. So now, could any of the economic concerns play games with that? Certainly to some degree, but it may play more games with how people celebrate weddings versus whether or not they actually have them. So, with that in mind, it's not so much about what's down. It's about kind of, what's the total number of these that's going on.
I mean, wedding headcount numbers are back to pre-COVID numbers, which is a real surprise. Mm-hmm. Expected those numbers to sort of crawl back up to what's the headcount at a wedding. The current weddings are showing the same headcount as pre-COVID. So that's
and childbirth is back in vogue, right? I mean, there were all these people who were out there saying that, COVID was going to create this huge baby bust. We were on our way. We were already trending downward in childbirth, and we were already looking at a baby bust. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of the folks who were, trapped at home, but who still were financially secure and felt that they could, that they could handle a child or another child, went ahead and went for it. I mean, what else was there to do, right?
Jody, I want to get back to the generational thing, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just a couple, one to build on the conversation there. It's also, as we're coming out of these, and it kind of, as Leana, you said at the beginning there, is like our needs have changed. So now people are living a hybrid life. So when you think, and we use weddings as an example, it's always been about providing the essentials, then it went to experiences, and then it's always these things that are kind of aspirational that people have. Well, now with you in a hybrid world, and also somebody's craving connection with others, and also a little concern about virus, like your needs have changed. That list of products is different that you aspire for. That list of products that you need are very different as you start your life together. So I think part of it is a couple
of examples of that, Joe. Like that
it could be just working from home, different needs, people building out their garages as entertainment spaces, maybe redoing their decks and outdoor entertaining, putting in griddles or things of that nature for it. So like there's a lot of just subtle changes that have happened in a hybrid life that really now creates a whole new set of aspirational products that you may want.
Right.
Moving back, Peter, to your comment.
Now, are we guilty of sort of being in a tunnel when it comes to considering different generations that are?
No, it's okay. No, I think we definitely should cover that. I mean, in addition to what you started out saying, which is that, even before COVID, things were trending later and later, whether that's because of, educational considerations, financial considerations, whatnot. The fact is that people are getting married later. They are, having children later, which does change the perspective of what those folks are going to need. You talked about premarital cohabitation, that a lot of times there are things that are already built up. And so the things that people actually need when they get married are very different than maybe the things that a 22-year-old needs when they get married. But the other thing is, and this is a little bit related to what Joe was just saying about new needs that have come up and been identified, is that, and I'm gonna mix IHA reports here, but one of the things that we saw in the IHA Market Watch report last year, which the four of us do together, is that folks going back, learning new things and taking on new skills and trying new things was through the roof during COVID again, and kind of that, we had all this extra time on our hands. And you marry that with some of what we saw in the occasions report last year and this year, which is that a surprising number of people who say that they personally are going back to school in the next year is within the over 35 range. These are people who are maybe looking at not, whether it's they're picking up new skills for the careers they already have, whether it's picking up new skills for, for their own leisure time, or whether it's a career change. The number of people who made career changes during COVID was incredible. So there was a whole kind of swell of that created a generational inconsistency in what you would think about from a going to college.
They're not the one who's going to school a little bit later is not necessarily looking for a hot pot for their dorm right now.
Right.
They might swing back to that home office need or something like that. So you have to consider all these variables when you're putting together this plan. Go ahead.
The consumers who tend to cook and bake most frequently, the majority of them have said that they are not decreasing their at-home cooking and baking, despite they at the time retreat of the pandemic a few months ago. But and also I think that before we leave generations, I don't want to leave boomers behind because they're the largest disposable income. They're also just still a great consumer for housewares because a lot of them are moving into smaller spaces. They don't want to take care of the lawn anymore. They don't want to, so they're moving into smaller spaces. They need things that are new solutions for living in those smaller spaces. And there is much of consideration for new housewares as anybody else. I think that there are opportunities there. And as Leana pointed out, there is still a tremendous desire to keep current, to learn new things. Our aspiration isn't to end up in one place anymore. We see all generations now see themselves as in a constant state of change and learning and growth. And, and boomers are just as much a part of that. So what can we engage them with that teaches them new skills, that brings them into their new environment comfortably and lets them enjoy some of the space some of the time and space that they're saving by not having to do the lawn.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Speaking of mixing different IHA studies, go ahead, Joe, then I'll get back.
But I just build on the generational conversation because I think it is an important one. And we're kind of at an influx. The great thing about home is everybody needs us, every generation. It's really their why and how we speak to them that's going to change for each person, how they define health and what their needs are. But I think what's sitting in front of us over at least for the next short period is a lot of the growth has happened initially by the 18 to 24, but lately the last few years it's been the 55 plus and $100,000 plus. Well, with the unemployment numbers, you see the companies that are letting some of the changes in unemployment, that tends to be a little bit of the higher income consumer in that area. So how is that going to adjust how they focus on things? And it's going to still evolve to the needs that are directly in front of them. They're not, if somebody is going through a major life moment, they're not going to skip it. They're still going to celebrate as much as they can. But then similarly, as the younger generation and more lower middle income consumers are going back and expanding and filling those roles, well, then their time has just adjusted. So their needs are going to change. So the beauty is every generation has a need, but we just got to really think about what's the why and the how for each generation and make sure, can we speak to either directly to that generation or B, find that common need, that common thread that goes across all of them.
As I was saying, Leana mentioned mixing some of the studies and reports that the IHA is working on. The four of us are working on the forthcoming Market Watch, and we're looking at how all of the kind of consumer opportunities and behaviors kind of fit into some real core fundamental themes or trends. Tom, you mentioned there's been a shift in terms of what we think of when we're giving gifts at an occasion, especially as we move in kind of past that marriage front into baby, into new home. We'll talk about pet a little bit. And even as we move into retirement and back to school, the idea of wellness factoring higher than it's perhaps ever. And that wellness takes on so many dimensions. So at the risk of starting to give away a little bit of where we are in the Market Watch, let's talk about how wellness factors into occasions right now and into home ownership and into some of the variables. Leana, let's start with you on that.
Oh, certainly. I mean, wellness is, I think for a long time, wellness really meant kind of, losing weight or being physically fit or whatever. And wellness means very, very different things now. I mean, certainly it's part of it, but it's really much more about how we feel than it is about how we look. And that could be how we feel physically or how we feel mentally. Mental wellness is actually outperforming physical wellness in terms of priority for consumers. So when you think about that, and then you look at these occasions and you think about what folks are giving for, these different occasions, whether it's, again, self-gifting or gifting to a friend or family, this attuneness towards wellness, particularly mental wellness, opens up a whole new kind of assortment of things that you might purchase for folks in those situations. One of the things that the occasions report revealed last year and this year is that with very few exceptions, there's no category of housewares that just blows everyone else out of the water in terms of gift giving for any of these occasions. Right. And what that means is that every one of these occasions has wide open space for an existing category in there to kind of come out in front, or for a new emerging category like mental and physical, kind of wellness to get in there and really, make a difference and grab some market share.
Yeah, you mentioned something about the baby shower being a very public gift-giving occasion, which kind of opens up some interesting ideas with regard to originality and relevance. And yeah. Tom, this is where you brought the idea that we're moving away. There is room for the traditional shower gifts, but there now are gifts that actually help the couple cope and live with a new baby. And that's where wellness, relaxation, and staying connected come into vogue. Some thoughts there, Tom?
Well, I think, to back it up just a little bit, when we talk about wellness, one of the things that came up, post-pandemic and pre-new pandemic, however you want to look at it, is that the depression rates among teens receded the more family time they spent. And so one of the things that I think that we can do as an industry is encourage that family time. I think that a lot of times we live in our heads in this industry, live here, and we think of all the things that we could do, but we have to understand that it's not necessarily in the DNA of the average person. It's the retailers and the manufacturers that give people ideas for new, less structured. Leana said at one point, we're moving into a place where occasions are less structured, and the things that we do are less structured, and they're more last minute decisions. And I agree with her 1,000%. I think retailers really need to sort of step in and give people ideas. I had said at one point, there are 3 elements that are going to define success going forward. 1 is simplicity, 2 is speed, and 3 is value, value for the price you're paying. But it's giving people ideas quickly on an end cap. This is what you're going to do this weekend. Wouldn't it be great if you had movie night, or if you had Sunday night, or, it's like all of these different things, the living room tailgate, all of these great ideas that happen all the time. And we and our staffs think them up. But a lot of times consumers don't think of those. But if they see them easily executed at a great value and simple and fast, they're going to get into it. And that helps. That really does a lot for the wellness of the family. We're still at a period. What's interesting is during the first year of the pandemic, we were at 70% of families said that they had dinner at the table together once a day, at least. And those numbers have only dropped a few points since the heat of the pandemic. So that tells you that we're still finding value in that. And how do we feed that?
I think, just sorry to interject there, Peter, but just what Tom said there, I think what's important, one of the things that's important to draw out of that is what he was saying about the notion of suppliers and retailers providing ideas for folks related to some of these occasions, right? So, because there is the nature of gift giving can be very different depending on the occasion. And I think I talked about this a bit in the report, but let's talk about the difference between a bridal shower and a wedding gift. They're very different. If I go to a bridal shower for a close friend of mine, the gifts are opened in front of everybody, and there's the oohing and eyeing, and a lot of times, I try very hard to put a lot of thought and consideration into that gift and bring a gift that has some kind of personal connection between myself and that person, right? There's a reason why I would have given this particular gift to this particular person. At a wedding, quite frankly, you show up with the wrapped gift, you drop it on a table, and you kind of go about your business, and it's opened at another time in another place. So the emotional connection to that gift giving is very, very different, both for the giver and for the recipient. In those instances where maybe it is a little more last minute, but I still want to be somebody who is putting my own personality and emotion into the idea, how do retailers and manufacturers help come up with those ideas for me? You know, oh, I'm running out to see Betty. Oh, didn't she just get a new dog? Is there somewhere I can go real quick and find like great gifts for first-time dog owners, right? And show up with something that's really thoughtful, but that was still inherently a little bit last minute.
The great example of that, you look at some board manufacturers that we show at the IHA, you look at some of this packaging and it gives you photos on the back of all the different things you can do. This it's charcuterie, it's food prep, it's butterboards, it's whatever it is. There's 10 things shown in images of what you can do. So sometimes it's as easy as correcting the package and making something giftable, you know?
Well, and I think one of the things you hit on there is interesting. If we just kind of even take a step back, what's happened during the pandemic is that whole process from inspiration to creating a transaction to delivery to even follow-up, that whole process is right now in flux over the next several years with all the innovation that's happened with the role of social media, with buy online, pick up in store, with all these things that are out there. This is clearly an opportunity to really change it. So if we take some of those events, like you talked about, health and wellness that goes across generations, we might be able to create conversations and links between the different generations to solve it. So for example, a lot of, we'll say boomer men, older men who, let's say through whatever reason are now living on their own, that they may not know how to cook or how to make food for themselves. And they're going to be not of that generation that really asks for help. Yet they have health and wellness issues. They have real issues that they need to start to manage it. Maybe it's a way of inspiring the kids who are in the family forming age on ways that they could do it. Are we developing products? So what are the ways that we can either inspire the individual in a different fashion through the mediums that they will now be using? Or are there ways to inspire the generation that also has an influence on them to also have a solution? So it really is it's a fascinating time with the change in retail to really make an impact on people's lives.
That's such a question for you more specifically. Have you actually been able to track? I don't need necessarily specific numbers, but are you seeing results that are in sync with sort of this shift in how to handle the consumer? We saw the commercial from Newell Brands, who is the exclusive sponsor of the occasions report this year, and you clearly they are looking to attach their brand identity to life moments, to that building of a relationship. Are you seeing numbers? Are you able to track any real meaningful impact of that type of strategy?
Well, one, I love the commercial that they have, and I think it's absolutely spot on with what needs to be done for helping consumers. So I love that part of it. Are we able to see it and track it? There are certain elements that we're able to do it, and there are certain ways that you can infer it by seeing what groups of gifts are being purchased together. Like our checkout tracking has the ability to see actually what's on the receipts. When you start to see what items are purchased together, you can kind of see what that life moment is and then track a little bit of the frequency that goes across those. So yes, we are seeing the changes that we have across those different events.
One of the categories that the Occasions Report began talking about last year, and we did it again this year, is pet ownership. And it's one of those interesting moments in a life. I would presume, I know all four of us have gone through this, some more recently than others. It was a boom behavior during the pandemic. Still happening in big chunks. And I think we'll start with Tom, because Tom, this is not just a one-time event buying the pet. This is the beginning of another family member, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think the initial occasion of somebody getting a pet, there's a big deal, especially during the pandemic. You talk to people and you show them and you share pictures and like you send gifts to them for what the pet is. But I think that it's I think that a lot of the pet industry is just, it's explosive. I mean, there's so many great, and one of the things that we came up with when we started looking at some stats from various external sources, but for example, Zulily did a big piece on pets. And one of the things that they came up with was that more than half of millennial pet owners buy their pets gifts at least once a month. And this is talking gifts. So yes, of course, sometimes it's functional things, like it's a brush or it's, this or that. But I think that when we spoil our pets. There's so many different discussions going on about it, but the bottom line seems to be that we treat our pets the way we want to be treated. We give them the comfort that we want to have. And so there's a lot of logic in the fact that we're constantly gifting them. We're constantly upping their lifestyle, get them a better, a better bed, and I think also you're seeing that the demand is evidenced really well by the land grabbing you're seeing. Everybody's got pet product now. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you make sure that you're really speaking with a broad voice and not just carrying the essentials?
Well, the other piece of that, though, is, again, this is another instance where wellness creeps into the conversation in interesting ways and expands your thinking beyond what you would traditionally associate with buying something for a new pet ownership. One of the product categories that does very, very well in the occasions report related to pet ownership is home environment. And, and as soon as you see that, you're like, well, of course, that makes sense, right? Allergens and dander and all these other things. Even if you're not struggling with that as a family, as people who live there, you still want to make sure that when folks come over, when I have my family over for Christmas and I've got a cousin who's allergic to cats, I want to make sure that she's going to be all right in my home. And so that's already on folks' mind, but it's like, and to your point, pet ownership continues to explode. I had the pleasure of speaking with the president of the American Pet Products Association not long ago. And he said, and our report reflects this as well, the explosion is going to continue this year. You hear about some of the animals being brought back to shelters and whatnot. They're being rehomed just as fast as they're coming back to shelters. So this has not slowed down. So for the last couple of years, if you are a home environment manufacturer or retailer of home environment products, you think about the last couple of years, home environment was so important in relation to germ control, right? And things that could filter out particles the size of COVID-19 and all of this. Well, now is there an opportunity? Again, Tom, you mentioned packaging, Joe, you mentioned promotions. How do you take that same product that was wildly successful for 2 years based on this aspects of it, of what it does, and reposition that in a way that follows the consumer trajectory and what's on their minds? Now it's really about pets and about, taking care of allergens in the air.
And do our core companies or do partnerships allow us to expand? You said something before about, getting a little bit, touching the softer side of things a little bit and getting a little bit more close to the emotion. So if you're providing pet products already that are much more functional, how can you grab some of the emotional part of things? Do you have the competency to, create pet massagers if you're already producing brushes? I think when we look at Habersham just came out with a statistic, formerly Statista, saying that over 60% of non-essential pet items were bought by boomers. So by non-essential, we mean gifts, basically. So it's like, how can you reach out using your core competencies? And I know it's a scary time to sort of expand the categories you work in, but this is one area that, we could say there's tremendous growth in it.
Well, I think part of it is just the change in needs, right? It changes your time, how you spend time. It changes how you go on vacation. It changes how you clean the house. It opens up whole new opportunity. I think from a food perspective, we would tell as consumers, you talk to health and wellness, we're wanting more natural homemade foods, yet when it comes to pets, it was mostly processed, right? So how do you make it easier for that process to happen? Does that open up innovation opportunities? Or the things we can learn from the pet industry has always been great at marketing. Think of Chewy and them. I hear from folks who will talk about how they will receive congratulations on your new pet or whatever the case may be. Well, are we writing to somebody saying, hey, congratulations on your retirement, congratulations on your engagement? Like, are there different ways that we can learn from even the pet industry to market even to a broader audience? So I think it's one of these things where it just opens up, because it changes how we do time, because it is such an emotional life moment that people have that goes for a long time. It really does open up a lot of doors for us.
We have to think of pet as home and housewares.
Yes.
We got to get
specialty channel, just for some, hold on a second, Tom. Just a specialty channel has actually told me, gourmet housewares retailers, that one of their biggest growth categories in the last year plus has been a move into pet. And it's not just functional pet, it's decorative pet, it's tabletop pet. It's food dispensing, all these things. So we have to now, as an industry, maybe find a way in the bigger box environment to move pet from from this side of the store, Housewares, try to figure out a way to put them all together. That is and will be a long-standing growth opportunity for retailers and the industry people who feel that they have an adjacency to that category as well too. Tom, you were going to wrap that thought up. Yeah.
That's too micro about it, but I mean, 2 people this year gave us a product from Dash that is a dog biscuit maker. So that's like 2 people who know us gave us dog biscuit makers. That their gift to us was something we could make biscuits for our dogs. So either we're obsessed or, so there are people who are already reaching into that, as a natural extension of what they already do and just talking to the pet owner.
I want to just real quick, Peter, before we go on, jump back on something Tom said. He mentioned partnerships. And I think there's something interesting there. If you think about the things that are maybe are traditionally thought of, with some of these occasions and figure out ways to, to partner with them. I am going to steal, Joe, I think I'm stealing this from you. So apologies up front. But during one of our conversations, you had mentioned, okay, so if I'm someone just got a new house or just moved into a new apartment and I'm going to bring them a bottle of champagne. Is there any reason why there aren't champagne flutes being sold with that champagne that, is packaged in a very, very nice, very, meaningful kind of welcome to your new home kind of way, and I think there's probably a million partnership opportunities like that. If you just think about even outside of our immediate industry, what are those things that people might bring over? People bring over wine for dinner. Is there a play there? Is there anything like that?
So right.
What kind of partnerships make sense?
You're so right. Collaboration is rampant in every industry right now, except for Housewares. It's super important that we on it because it's a great way to have a short-term relationship that feeds you both, that gets you both out there, glomming on each other's social, and really, it's super important. Find somebody to collaborate with. They're great. It's a great point.
We're going to move toward the conclusion of today's roundtable. I want to give each of you a chance, maybe just for some final thoughts. Once again, let me remind you that the link to the homepage news report, the IJ Occasions report, is in the chat room. I encourage you to look at it's a very detailed, in-depth look at each of these occasions. It looks at how they act kind of by themselves, but also how they connect with one another. There's a lot of charts. If you have any questions, we're not going to do a Q&A today, but I would encourage you to reach out to us. Reach out to me directly at pgiannetti@homepagenews.com. Reach out to Joe, Tom, Leana. We can get you their contact information if you don't already have it. Some final thoughts. Let's go around the table here. Leana, start with you.
Yeah, I think, I was thinking about coming into this and thinking, okay, if someone asked me, what do I think the most, where's the biggest opportunity in the next year in terms of occasions and where's maybe kind of the waning opportunity? Pet certainly jumps out at me, but I think too, the weddings and engagements jump out at me less because of the volume of them, which is still very high, but more because going into this report, I always assumed that it was just a slam dunk for like tableware and kitchen electrics, right? That outside of that, and the fact that the field is so green still, that there are so many opportunities for other categories to play in the wedding space, I think creates a huge opportunity there. The occasion that, I don't think it'll come as a big surprise to anyone that I think is probably less critical in this next year is new home ownership. I mean, I think, I'm one of those folks who bought at the height of the insanity back in summer of 2021. And, I still get the alerts on homes in my area, and the stuff that used to get snapped up in 24 hours has been sitting there for 6 months. So I just, I would say that's probably not where I would lay the majority of my bets this year.
I'm gonna get up to 30,000 feet because I think the opportunity for gifting is so broad. But again, as Leana said before, it's just a question of how we reach out and tell people. When Joe was talking about different occasions, I was and about Father's Day, I thought every chief merchant should be saying to their buying group, so okay, it's Father's Day. How are we going to make them? How are we going to make it a healthier Father's Day? How are we going to, like give gifts that really make, because honestly, that dads need help, we're all cranky and sore, but also so everything that you put on end cap is a gift. Okay. Our industry needs to start looking at everything as a gift and realizing that every day is an occasion. So we may not call it a gift, but when you look at it past an end cap and you say, It's sort of like Hallmark used to say, when you care enough to send the very best, talk about the people that talk about gifting occasions, talk about gifting to your own family. What are you bringing home tonight? What are you telling them? What's the message? Tell them you love them, tell them you care, tell dad he matters, it's all about emotional messaging that's sincere, because there's a lot that we can do. Our industry is very in touch with what people's needs are. So,
Tom, I've known you. Joe, I've known you a long time, and you've been talking about life moments, I think, since I first met you. Is this industry there, or is there a lot of room to grow into that?
Well, I think we're well ahead of where we were back in 2016, and I think there's still room to grow. I think this report that you guys have created here is actually a really wonderful report, and I do encourage everybody to read it, but also to archive it, because the beauty of what you're doing is a lot of these are consistent questions or consistent ways that allows you to start to look at this year over year. Now you've got 2 years next year, you're gonna have 3 years. So that ability to kind of see how things are shifting is gonna really help folks. So I highly encourage people to look at it. But there still is opportunity for us to go through it. I love what Tom said in the sense that, we used to say it's this day, so therefore buy gift, but we're really trying to what is the need of that consumer at that time. We still have to sell. It's not just a right of because it's that day, you got to buy it. It's selling to what the needs that the consumer has. And I think there's a greater opportunity to do that, to expand to other areas. There's still many other life moments. Home improvement opens up a huge one. Day-to-day living, indoor entertaining. There's so many life moments, but by starting with this, I think it helps both retailers and manufacturers to think, how can I first tie into it? How can I inspire? How can I go after a broader audience at one time? I think there's going to develop techniques that everybody has and tactics that people have to really expand the moments even beyond what we're talking about here. But this is a great, great first start.
I just wrote a column that talked about occasions and the convergence of occasions, celebrations, and the at-home entertaining trend. I mean, while this industry has been concerned about how to sort of get back on that kind of regular growth curve, 2023, I think, is going to really be that benchmark year for resetting. We're no longer comparing to pre-COVID. We're past sort of that unpredictable spike and unpredictable decline. We get to kind of find out what the new baseline is, and it's an industry that has consistently done well against economic headwinds. It's dealt with recessions before. It's dealt with some of the variables now that have a little history behind them, but it's an industry that constantly asks what's new. And I think sometimes what's new is focused a lot on the product and not on how you bring that product to market and communicate that product to the industry. I think that is going to be an important new in 2023 in terms of finding that message, finding that story, and building that relationship. Before I say goodbye, I want to bring up a movie, if you haven't seen it yet, The Glass Onion, which is a Knives Out movie. And I'm going to tell you why I'm bringing it up. Everyone's looking kind of for the next thing, the next solution. And if you watch the movie without giving it all away, the solutions are sometimes right in front of you. You just sort of have to look a little closer to get to them. I think occasions is a big part of the solution, whether it's these kind of life moments or whether we're sprinkling in the annual events. This is a chance for the industry to really, as Joe said earlier, tug at the heartstrings, as Tom said, to celebrate anything, and as Leana said, to see the full scope of product that is available in this. Once again, I'm Peter Giannetti of Homepage News. Oh, Tom, you want to say something else before we go?
I want to say one more thing, and I hate to bring it up at the last minute, but don't forget singles. As occasions, we tend to talk to couples and families, and don't forget singles. Huge market. Galentine's Day is about singles talking to singles. And it's very important not to forget them. They're a big part of the gift business, and it's just don't forget them.
Right. It's a good point. We often talk about primary purchasers, but this is above and beyond primary purchasers. This is about building new purchasers in the business and seeing that whole way. Leana Salamah from the IHA, Joe Derochowski from NPD, Tom Mirabile from Springboard Futures. I thank you so much. This recording will be available very soon on homepagenews.com through IHA. We will keep you informed on occasions into the next year. It's a very fluid thing. I hope everyone got something out of this today to think about how they might change their approach. Read the occasions report. That'll give you a lot of the nuts and bolts that we discussed today. Everyone, until then, we'll see you next time. I'm Peter Giannetti, Homepage News. Take care now.